Oh, shut up. Yeah, you were right. I was wrong. You're smart.
You're now listening to the Wandering Buffalo podcast with your hosts, Andrew Chang and Justin Goddard.
Hello and welcome to the Wandering Buffalo podcast, a show on the Built-in Buffalo Network. My name is Andrew Chang, and alongside me, as always, is my co-host Justin Goddard. Today, Justin and I would normally talk about the Bills' next opponent and get you kind of prepped up for that, but the Bills don't have an opponent. They have a bye week, so they got to do some self-scouting, some time to get healthy and all that good stuff. So what Justin and I are going to do are kind of give out some bye week awards, some superlatives, if you will, but specifically on defense. Next week, we'll talk about offense and get you prepped up for the game against the Dolphins. So that's what's slated here next on the podcast. As always, you can find us on most social media and podcasting platforms, and of course on YouTube by searching up the Wandering Buffalo podcast. In addition, you can find other amazing shows on the Built-in Buffalo Network, such as All Day Buffalo with Eli and Not Your Average Podcast and the 716 with our homegirl T. Estelle and Big Mike. So definitely check them out. They're doing great stuff over there, and I know they got big plans ready for the bye week. But Justin, how are you doing?
I'm doing good tonight. I'm already a little in my doldrums of knowing that I don't have football to look forward to. But, take a little time to recover from the loss and get our minds right and start prepping for the Dolphins. But good otherwise. How are you today?
I'm doing good, and it's been a couple days since that Monday night heartbreaker, and I still feel good. Tremaine, you proved that naysayers wrong, and I still would have gone up for it on 4th and inches or whatever it was. It was the right call, in my opinion. But yeah, overall, doing great. Heart rate's down to a normal level right now, so we're good. No palpitations. So we're gonna get to the meat potatoes of this episode, Justin, and we have, let's see here, 5 awards with a bonus award at the end. So let's start off with this first one. We'll get right into it, and that's, again, we're talking about defense only. Okay, so early season MVP. Who do you have?
I got my guy Micah Hyde. It was kind of
You son of a gun.
Yeah, it was kind of a toss-up between Hyde and Poyer for me. I think they're both deserving. But I think Hyde's just having a little bit better of a season. He's getting turnovers. People decided to start throwing at him again, which, I think his numbers were kind of down the past couple of years because people just stopped throwing his way, and they're trying him again, and he's making them pay. And I think he's been just overall a really bright spot to this defense so far this year.
Yeah, and my pick was Micah Hyde / Jordan Poyer, but I think I'll have to think on the fly here for a different MVP, just so we're not on the same page and give you listeners something else to listen to. But I completely agree with Micah Hyde. He's definitely the defensive MVP or Jordan Poyer, because those two are just playing really, really good complementary football right now. They're playing at such a high level and not letting big plays happen. Minus that King Henry run with the 70-yard touchdown play. And there was a video that surfaced where it looked like Jordan Poyer was getting held when Henry came through that hole, so maybe that play shouldn't have been a touchdown, but that's neither here nor there. We're talking about Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, and you're right. It's weird. These teams are testing Micah Hyde like he's just nobody, and I'm all for it. And maybe they aren't testing him like nobody, but they are testing him, and it isn't working well so far. And I gotta say, the most impactful play that I've seen from Micah Hyde thus far has to be that pick 6 against the Chiefs. That really was a backbreaker for the Kansas City Chiefs, and I think it fueled the team so much defensively that there was no way we were going to lose that game. So for my early season MVP, give me Matt Milano. Give me Matt Milano. This man was playing with his hair on fire for every single game except for the Kansas City Chiefs game, obviously because, he was hurt. And, it's hard to say at this moment what kind of impact he really had against the Tennessee Titans. I think they were telling him, play low, and defend the run, even with Tremaine. And I think it made him a little susceptible, both of them really, to the passing and play action passes of Ryan Tannehill. And that's not really his fault if it's a coaching decision. Hey, come down in the box and make sure King Henry doesn't run all over us. Whoops, we're going to actually throw over your head instead. So I can't really fault Matt Milano's play or Tremaine Edmonds' play, but in terms of early season defensive MVP, I think Matt Milano has been playing really, really good football, and even PFF said that he's been doing amazing, and you know how PFF is.
Yeah, Matt Milano's a guy that was definitely in the running for me here, and Hyde just kind of edged him out a little bit, but just looking at the impact that he has on the defense, it's definitely a better unit with him out there. And when you think about, maybe he should be the nod for MVP here just because of the impact that he has. And I start thinking about, we were looking at the possibility of having to replace him this offseason and what that would have looked like. You're either going to be trotting out probably a rookie there or A.J. Klein getting more work. And A.J. Klein, despite how much better he played at points last season, is not a guy I want out there as a full-time linebacker. So definitely respect it. He's definitely right up there for me.
Yeah, and even A.J. Klein, when he got asked to play in that Kansas City Chief game, he even did well. So, good for you, Klein. You were a surprise to me because I'm not gonna lie, I was very worried, very, very worried about that kind of play. Moving on to the next award here, award, is biggest surprise. And I'm going to go first this time because I have a feeling you might take this from me. But it's Gregory Rousseau. This man so far has been impacting on defense in a very positive way. And I understand he didn't have his best game against the Titans, but he's a rookie. And we're going to go through those growing pains. And what I really like about this and why it's the biggest surprise is because he is a rookie. And there was a lot of people saying, we're not so sure about Gregory Rousseau. We're not so sure about him. He had only 1 year of true production, and then COVID hit, and then he didn't play. But he's come into the league, played very, very well. And the thing I like the most about this, Justin, is the fact that he's on a rookie year contract. Rookie deal. It's so cheap. And you'll never get value like this ever again out of a player like Rousseau if he keeps on this track of improvement. So gotta go with Rousseau here. Big boy Groot. I'm all for it.
Yeah, so that one wasn't mine. He was definitely in the consideration, so I'm not stealing yours here. And you might be able to guess where mine's going then. And mine is Tremaine Edmonds. And that's largely to do with my own personal biases of being a little bit down on him. Probably a little bit further down than I should have been, but him just, especially over the last two... Oh, shut up. Yeah, you were right. I was wrong. You're smart. I was just, I was a little bit down on him. And, I think it's fair to have really high expectations from him and really want him to be, Luke Kuechly. But coming in, especially the last couple games, he's really been showing me, the things that I wasn't seeing, of just really sticking his nose in there and sticking a guy that's running the ball. He looks like he's playing a little more loose, playing more on his instincts, whereas in the past I saw him kind of hesitating to start moving towards the ball. And it looks like the more he keeps playing in this fashion, the more loose he's playing, the more impactful he's becoming, and really moving around the field well. And I can't really argue with yours either. Rousseau's been really great and a nice surprise, coming in when everybody says, he's not pro ready and, his stats were a college anomaly, all that stuff. Rousseau's looked great, but
yeah.
I give this one to Edmonds right now.
Yeah, I guess I didn't think to put Edmonds here because I had a feeling he was going to ascend as a player. And I always forget that Bills Mafia is a little divided when it comes to Tremaine Edmonds. And I'm not entirely sure why, but hey, I would agree with you. I think he has played a lot better this year than his his 3 previous years. I think he's playing much faster and diagnosing the plays quicker. And you saw this against the Kansas City Chiefs really well, and then you saw him do really well against King Henry, where he would hit him as soon as he came through the hole or met him out on the boundaries and made Henry really work for those yards. And sometimes he only got like 1 or 2 of them, and it was because of Tremaine. So definitely a nice surprise there. Let's move on to our next award here, and a little more on the pessimistic side here, but biggest disappointment. Justin, why don't you take the lead here?
So there was a lot of different ways that I wanted to go with this one, and my first 2 choices were between Vernon Butler and Mario Addison, and I kind of pivoted off of them because I looked at it a different way, and I kind of adjusted for what I came into the season with expectations of, and I didn't really expect either of them to really be making huge impacts. So I couldn't really consider them my biggest disappointment because that was my expectations. You're going to be mad at me. My pick here is Jerry Hughes.
Hughes your daddy? Okay.
It's not that he's playing particularly poorly or, being out of position and, having the wrong assignments or whatever. There hasn't been many times this season where I really feel like he's affecting the game. And even with the emergence of Epinesa and Rousseau, I still think that Hughes is far and away our best pass rusher. And be it team scheming for him or game planning more for him to kind of take him out of the equation, I just really haven't seen a ton of impact from him, and it's something I got so used to for so long that to say that I'm not a little disappointed, I'd be lying. So he's my pick there.
Definitely not where I thought you were going to go with that, but I do see what you're saying. I think Hughes has been playing okay so far, and they reduced his snaps to more of the money downs. And I guess that's kind of the Vernon Butler treatment, but I think Hughes is in there more than Vernon Butler for the obvious reasons. He's more of an impact player. If there's anything negative that I have to hold against Jerry Hughes, which, Hughes has been a part of this organization for so long, and I love him as a player. It's the fact that sometimes when he's rushing the passer, he takes those inside angles, which naturally leaves this huge hole for the quarterback to just run out and pick up a first down or, a couple easy 6 or 7 yard gains when it's not necessary. We saw that a lot in the AFC Championship rematch game against the Chiefs. Mahomes ran a lot because Hughes kept taking that inside angle. And who knows what would have happened if we were able to keep Mahomes in the pocket and contain him more. Maybe we would have gotten some more interceptions or some more, sacks, or even more QB pressures. Well, I guess if he rolls out to his right and runs, he's pressured to do so. But I understand where you're coming from, and I think it's coming from a good place, and the fact that we know what Hughes can be, and we just want more from him because we know he can do that.
Precisely.
Yes. This just feels weird, right? Biggest disappointment on the defense thus far, because this defense has been regarded as coming back to peak form. And when you have a fan base that where all of us are pretty much on the same page that, like, hey, this team's doing really, really well, especially on defense, it seems ticky-tacky or really, hard to pick a player that I don't think isn't performing up to snuff, because defense is, football itself is a team game, so I don't know. I guess if I had to pick someone, I would pick Levi Wallace, and I don't think it's necessarily his fault. It's because Trey White is the opposite player to him. So he's going to naturally catch a lot more attention. And we already seen him kind of get picked on a little bit. I think about that touchdown pass that he gave up to Pringle from the Kansas City Chiefs, a no-name wide receiver. And then I think about how A.J. Brown's kind of big boyed him a little bit. It just seemed like in the season thus far, when the team needed to get a possession type pass play going, they know not to go against Trey, so naturally they're going to go after Levi, and I don't really think it's necessarily his fault, and it's not like he's playing bad. It's just, if I got to pick on someone, I got to pick on you, and I feel like the opposing quarterback.
Yeah.
If it's not White, it's you. You.
Right, yeah. Levi Wallace was in consideration for me here, but I think everything you just said, he's going to get a ton of targets with Trey across from him. I also just didn't have it in my heart to put him in this category. Like you said, it's hard to really pick a disappointment right now. But I feel like his whole career he's kind of overachieved, being an undrafted player that not only made it to the starting ranks, but like has locked down and held that position through any competition they've brought in. Overall, I find myself pretty pleased with Levi despite his shortcomings, because he plays within his limitations and he does what he's asked to do. Does he get bullied on some targets and picked on a little bit? Yes, but he also tends to make the tackle when he gets picked on and whatnot. So I definitely see where you're coming from, and like you said, it's not really a spot where I wanted to pick anybody either. I'm very impressed with the defense thus far this year, and as a whole, they've exceeded my expectations. So that was definitely a hard category to pick on somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to take a quick break. Stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. We're going to wrap up this superlative award for the defensive side of football here for the Buffalo Bills as they are on their bye week. And we're going to pick up with the most improved award. And I think I went first last time, so Justin, I'll let you take this one.
So my most improved, I have Taron Johnson, and he kind of feels like a weird pick just based on some of his late season heroics last year. But it wasn't too long ago that we're looking at, Taron Johnson was very up and down. He was getting benched for Cam Lewis, future with the team fully in jeopardy at early in the season last year. And then, kind of started playing a little more consistently. Obviously had some two franchise-changing plays. But then going into this season, he's looked really good. He looks good in coverage. He's always been good, in the box, sticking his nose in and run plays. And he just looks like he's really improved in the coverage aspects, and that was his biggest weakness, right? So when you put that all together, he nets himself a contract extension, and we get to keep that secondary rolling. So that's my guy.
Yeah, and it's hard for me not to agree with you, considering, he last season he got benched for Cam Lewis, who is honestly a pretty good backup in my opinion, and he comes back, fights for like the snaps, not really because Cam Lewis got hurt, but he understands he's got a fire underneath him, because if he keeps this up, he's not going to be a starter and he's not going to get paid. But then he comes back with those 2 pick sixes, and really defenses have started to respect him, and he's carried that momentum into this year, and he's been playing really, really well. And I just love the fact that when he got signed, the Bills put out a video with him and him signing, and just in general, where he said, "I want to be here. I want to be in Buffalo." And that might be a simple statement, but I remember there was a time way back when it was so hard to get any type of talent in Buffalo, that to the point where we had to grossly overpay them. And I'll use Shady McCoy as an example. He got traded. He didn't want to come here. There was no way he wanted to come here, and he was mad, but the Bills were like, all right, we'll give you money, and he was like, okay. And then he ended up falling in love with Buffalo a little bit, maybe against his will, but he definitely liked Buffalo. And I think now Buffalo is a hot destination for players with good work ethic and want to come to win. And Taron Johnson is the latest example of that. So definitely great signing there. My most improved, I was going to say Tremaine Edmonds, but we already talked about him. So I'm going to pivot here, and I'm going to say A.J. Epinesa. And the reason why I say that is because he's year 2. Year 1, he was kind of not really impactful. We draft him in the second round. He comes into camp looking significantly lighter, and he's trying to learn this playbook, and all while trying to figure out his weight. Gets hurt during that Arizona game, and kind of starts showing up a little bit during later in the season, during last year. And then, obviously he has the whole offseason, finds a good weight, comes in, has 9 pressures on the Miami Dolphins himself, or 7 or 9, whatever it was. Regardless, insane pressures that most teams can't even get in a week, let alone the man just had it by himself. So I think A.J. Epinesa has shown me that he's made that jump in terms of production, in terms of pressure, and even when he's not getting the sack, he's affecting the play. So the intangibles, right, of pushing the quarterback up in the pocket so other players can get an opportunity to create another pressure or get a sack or what you will. So, in general, I think A.J. Epinesa is my most improved player of this year thus far, at least.
Yeah, it's the points you bring up. It's kind of hard to disagree with that too. He's also made a very good leap this year. I guess I kind of gave Taron Johnson the edge here because I wasn't expecting it as much from him. Not necessarily that I was expecting this kind of jump from A.J., but he had the pedigree. That being said, I wasn't expecting quite this leap in year 2, where there's times he gets on a roll there where he looks like his hair's on fire, and he's coming in hot, and I've been very impressed with him so far this year as well.
Yeah, and it's such a hard category to pick. When you came up with this award, I was like, oh man, who do I pick here? So many improvements from last year's lackluster defense that it's a great problem to have. Let's move on to our last reward before we get to our bonus category, and that's the Too Early to Tell award. And I'm going to go first here because I want to go first. And that's this defense as a whole. Hit my head on the mic there. So again, that's this defense as a whole. And the reason why I said that is because although I think this defense is playing at a really high level, I don't necessarily think 6 games is enough of a sample size for me to understand what this defensive strength and weaknesses are. And there's some factors that come into this, right? The small sample size. I just said that. Strength of opponents. We played against, and I understand we can't control who we play against, but you have to consider this, right? We played Davis Mills and the Houston Texans. Then we, in the rain, nonetheless. Then we played, who else? A Ryan Fitzpatrick-less Washington football team with Taylor Heineke. And then we played a Tua Tagovailoa-less Dolphins team, which, I mean, Tua's Tua, so there wasn't much of a drop-off when you put Jacoby Brissett in there, in my opinion. But, 3 opponents right there, and it's not like I wasn't sold on this defense, but I was like, okay, well, this definitely looks like we're going in the right way. Show me a little bit more. And then we played the Kansas City Chiefs, and they normally score 34-ish points a game, at least at that time, and we were able to hold them down to 20 points. So 2 scoring drives below their mean, and I was very happy with it. And I started to think to myself, I was like, well, rain was a factor in there too. Maybe could that have been it? I was like, no, maybe not. So I say all this really to say that although this defense has shown some really, really high level of play, specifically against the Chiefs, and let's say we toss out the 2 shutouts and the game against Washington, we also had a really bad game against the Titans. Really, really bad. We were averaging number 1 scoring defense, 12.8 yards or something like that per game, and we just let the Titans get 34 points on us. So almost triple the amount that we were used to. That's got to raise some red flags, and again, it could only be 1 game. There's not enough sample size for me to really say that, oh, this defense is terrible now just because we play the Titans. It's 1 game. So I guess that's where I'm coming from in terms of it's too early to tell award.
Yeah, I like the approach that you took there because it's, we've seen a lot of good things out of this defense so far, but you do have to consider the opponents that you're playing, and we've looked. The 2 games I look at in particular that kind of make it a toss-up for me is the Chiefs and Titans games. I kind of throw out the rest of them, and you go from one extreme to the other of the Chiefs being one of the most explosive offenses in the league that you all but shut down, and then the Titans who, they're not a bad offense, but they're not world burners over there, and they really lit you up. So I think that's definitely a good pick for the too early to tell, and that's going to be a story throughout the whole season. I went a different approach, and just I got an individual player, and mine was Boogie Basham, and I think we've seen some good things out of him. We've seen flashes. He came in his first career game with the Bills. He got a sack. He's looked pretty good in the run defense. But I think he's a guy that we'll be at the end of the season. It'll still be too early to tell. I think he's going to get a bit of the AJ Epinesa treatment from last year, where we might not see him active for a ton of games, barring any injuries or whatnot. Just kind of let him groom and develop. And boy, if we get anything close to the jump from year 1 to year 2 like we had with Epinesa, and you add him into the stable there, it's going to be a pretty mean pass rush next year. But I don't have enough data yet to form my opinion on what I think of Basham.
Yeah, Basham was a great pick here, and I suspected that you would have picked him, so I went for a different route.
Well done. You know me.
This time I was able to screen that. But when it comes to Boogie Basham, right, I think he's a perfect candidate for the award. So yes, I agree with you. And in some ways, and again, there's only 6 games played so far, I think he's had a bigger impact than AJ Epinesa had when he was a rookie so far, at least over the span of AJ Epinesa's first 6 games, right? I think Epinesa had 1 sack, but I think he just ran Sam Darnold out of bounds, so not really, I guess. So Boogie Basham's interesting because he's a 2nd-round pick, and I thought, he's going to be a starter every time, but he's sitting on the bench, and he's coming in seldom for specific game plans, and I wonder if that changes soon, especially with how the defensive line plan didn't really work against the Titans. It just flat out didn't work. I wonder if because Basham's got the inside-outside versatility, and maybe they go like, hey, let's get this guy some more opportunities. Let's get him some more snaps. Take Harrison Phillips out, or, deactivate one of the 4 linebackers that we didn't need out on the field against the Titans, and bring in, Boogie Basham or AJ Epinesa, and really beef up this defensive line, because he's flashed, yes, and he's got a high motor, so he'll never stop until the whistle. He'll play through that. But I wonder if something like that happens, and if it does, I'd be very intrigued to see the kind of impact and development that he will make on this team. So, perfect candidate for that award. All right, let's transition to the bonus category here before we wrap up the episode, and that's if Bean were to make a trade, who would you like him to see? What position would you like him to see upgrade on the defensive unit, among the defense in general?
So I don't think this is going to be one that we disagree on. So for me, it'd be the cornerback 2 position, and for me, it's not straight up, 1-for-1 with Levi. I think Levi remains the starter. For me, it's more if we were to make a move at the deadline, just being a player that could bolster up some of the depth. I know the talk for Dane Jackson's really quieted down now that the regular games are being played and it's not preseason. But we largely still don't know what we have in Dane Jackson. Certainly not much else behind him. So I still remain very nervous about what our depth looks like at that position, cornerback in general, let alone cornerback 2. So if there were to be a trade deadline move on the defensive side of the ball, I would like to see the cornerback room get bolstered a little bit.
Yeah, likewise here, and I'm not sure if Bean sees anything out there. And you saw teams such as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers kind of suffer some injuries to the cornerback room, and they brought in players like Richard Sherman, and he hasn't played very well. So I don't really know who's out there who could play better than Levi. So we might be stuck, and that sounds pretty bad. We're not stuck with Levi, but we might not find better cornerback play out there on the streets as opposed to what we have here in Buffalo. And side note here about Richard Sherman, which I thought was really funny. I saw a Twitter exchange. I don't know if you heard this, but there was he got hurt. I forgot against the Dolphins, and somebody tweeted oh, Richard Sherman got hurt. He can't come back any worse. And then Richard Sherman replies I could come back as you. And the guy replied back. He said, you would be immediately less of a threat to your significant other. I was like, damn, that is a burn. And multiple thousands of people like that guy's response. And just don't do that. Don't be a piece of crap, Big
yikes.
And you won't get burned like that. Yeah, big yikes. Sheesh. I don't know. I guess for me, I would agree cornerback 2 spot. But I'll go a little big picture here. If there's no need to have a guy like Vernon Butler on this team, if he's consistently a healthy scratch, and maybe they have him there just in case, somebody goes down, aka Star Lotulelei, and then Harrison Phillips. I think he's the last line of defense, or Harrison Phillips the last line of defense. I propose, and this is assuming that Star Lotulelei stays healthy, that why don't we get rid of Vernon Butler? Vernon Butler, he hasn't done anything. He's inconsistent, and he's expensive to be a healthy scratch. He's basically, what's his name?
Trent Murphy.
Trent Murphy 2.0, but he doesn't play. I don't know. For me, I'm not about it. That's not a good, allocation of resources. And I understand where Bean was in terms of when he signed that move. Bring in players that that you self-scouted, and this team talks so highly of Vernon Butler, but I've yet to see it. I don't think it's coming. Dump the contract somewhere else.
I like the way you kind of flip that around. Not necessarily somebody we bring into the building, but maybe little addition by subtraction type of idea. Getting into the snaps as capital idea, freeing up some of these opportunities for some of the younger guys. So I like that.
Yeah. Well, that's going to wrap it up for today's episode. Go ahead and comment, subscribe, and review our podcast, as well as other amazing shows that you can find on the Built-in Buffalo Network. We're always looking for great guests on our show, so reach out to us on our social media platforms if you're interested by searching up the Wandering Buffalo Podcast. And if you have someone else you want to put on an award, let us know, and we'd love to talk to you about it. Justin, where can the people find you?
Find me on any social media at jgods22.
And as always, you can find me by searching up Two Changs. That's going to do it for this week's episode. Stick around for next week. As I mentioned, we'll do the offensive superlative awards, probably something very similar to this format. And then we'll do our game preview for the spooky showdown against the Miami Dolphins. More of a fright for them than us. But should be a good one. All in all, go Bills.